The first thing I noticed wasn't the moaning coming from my bedroom upstairs. It was my wife's wedding ring sitting on the kitchen counter next to her coffee mug, like she'd casually discarded 22 years of marriage along with her morning caffeine routine. Before we dive deeper into this story, I have one small request. Please subscribe, drop a like, comment, and hit that hype button to boost this channel so more people can discover these incredible Reddit stories. I'm Trent Mallory, and I've been a structural engineer for 2 decades. I know when something's about to collapse. The signs are always there if you're paying attention. Stress fractures, foundation shifts, load-bearing walls that can't handle the pressure anymore. Our marriage had been showing cracks for months, but I'd been too busy keeping other people's buildings from falling down to notice my own life was about to implode. The moaning got louder. A man's voice joined in. Not mine. I set down my toolbox and listened. Janelle was supposed to be at her marketing firm until 6. It was barely 3 in the afternoon. The voice upstairs belonged to Russell Baird, her boss, a guy who wore $1,000 suits and drove a Tesla, the kind of man who'd never had grease under his fingernails or worked an honest day in his life. "Oh God, Russell, yes!" Janelle's voice carried down the stairs like a sledgehammer to my chest. I could have stormed upstairs, could have kicked down the door and made a scene. Instead, I did what any good engineer would do. I gathered evidence. My phone was already recording as I climbed the stairs, each step creaking like a countdown timer. The bedroom door was cracked open. Through the gap, I could see my wife of 22 years straddling her boss on the bed I'd built with my own hands. The irony wasn't lost on me. She was riding him on furniture I'd crafted, in a house I'd renovated, betraying a marriage I'd fought to keep together while she climbed the corporate ladder. Russell's hands were all over her. She was making sounds I hadn't heard in years. They were so lost in their moment that neither noticed me standing in the doorway, phone in hand, documenting the end of everything I'd believed in. "Trent's such a bore," Janelle panted between movements. "All he talks about is blueprints and building codes. You make me feel alive again." Russell grunted his agreement. "Guy's a loser, blue-collar nobody. You deserve better, baby. You deserve someone like me." That's when I cleared my throat. They froze like deer in headlights. Janelle's face went from flushed with passion to white with terror in about 2 seconds. Russell scrambled for the sheets, suddenly not so confident without his suit of armor. "Don't stop on my account," I said, keeping my voice level. "I was just wondering if you wanted me to fix that squeaky bed frame while you're using it. Professional courtesy and all." "Trent!" Janelle scrambled off Russell, grabbing for her clothes. "This isn't what it looks like!" I laughed. Actually laughed. "Really? Because it looks like my wife is screwing her boss in our bed while telling him what a loser I am. But hey, maybe I need glasses." Russell found his voice. "Look, man, we can work this out." "Can we?" I stepped into the room, still recording. "How exactly do we work out 22 years of marriage and you banging my wife? Is there a corporate policy for that, Russell? Maybe a team-building exercise?" Janelle was crying now, mascara running down her cheeks. "Please, Trent, let me explain." "Explain what? That you've been lying to me for months? That you take your ring off when you leave the house? That you've been staying late at work to stay late with him?" I gestured at Russell, who was trying to put his pants on while maintaining some shred of dignity. "Save it, Janelle. I'm an engineer, not an idiot." I turned to leave, then stopped. "Oh, and Russell, you might want to move your Tesla. I'd hate for something to happen to it while you're up here working on your employee relations." The sound of them scrambling to get dressed followed me down the stairs. By the time they made it to the front door, I was already in the garage, selecting the right tools for the job. Russell's Tesla Model S sat in my driveway like a silver middle finger. Beautiful car, expensive. The kind of thing a man buys when he's compensating for something. I'd always admired the engineering, the clean lines, the innovative design, the way it whispered money and success. That's why it was such a shame when all 4 tires developed sudden, catastrophic failures. I used a simple awl, clean punctures, Nothing dramatic. The kind of damage that could happen to anyone who parked in the wrong neighborhood. The tires deflated with satisfying hisses, like the sound of Russell's ego leaking out. "What the hell are you doing?" Russell burst out of the house, still tucking his shirt in. "Preventive maintenance," I said, wiping the all clean. "These tires look dangerous. Wouldn't want you to have an accident." His face turned red. "You psycho. Do you know how much those tires cost?" "Less than a good divorce lawyer, I'm guessing." Janelle appeared behind him, fully dressed, but still looking like she'd been hit by a truck. "Trent, please, we need to talk about this like adults." "Adults?" I set down my tools and looked at her. Really looked at her. When had she become this stranger? When had the woman I'd married turned into someone who could lie to my face every morning over coffee? Adults don't screw around behind their spouse's back, Janelle. Adults don't mock their husband to their lover. Adults don't throw away 22 years for a guy in a fancy suit. "It just happened," she said weakly. "Bullshit. Nothing just happens. You made choices. Every lie, every late night at the office, every time you took off your ring. Those were choices." Russell stepped forward, trying to assert some authority. "Look, I know you're upset, but damaging my property isn't going to solve anything." I smiled at him, the kind of smile a predator gives its prey. "You're absolutely right, Russell. Damaging your property won't solve anything, but it sure as hell made me feel better." The police arrived 20 minutes later. Mrs. Kowalski from next door had called them after hearing the shouting. She was also recording everything on her phone from behind her fence, probably already posting it to the neighborhood Facebook group. Officer Martinez took statements, while Officer Chen examined the Tesla. I admitted to the tire damage, no point denying it with Mrs. K's video evidence, but I also showed them my phone recording of what I'd found in my bedroom. "This is a civil matter," Martinez told Russell after reviewing everything. "You can file a report for the property damage, but given the circumstances," he shrugged, "might be better to just call your insurance and move on." Russell's face was purple now. "This is insane. He can't just destroy my car because his wife cheated." "Actually," I said helpfully, "in Michigan, adultery is still technically illegal. Misdemeanor offense, rarely prosecuted, but it's on the books. Want me to file a complaint?" The officers exchanged glances. Martinez handed Russell a card. "Call a tow truck, and maybe park somewhere else next time." After the police left, Janelle tried one more time. "Trent, I know I screwed up, but we can fix this. We can go to counseling, work through it." "No." The word came out harder than I'd intended. "We can't fix this, Janelle. You can't undo being with him. You can't take back what you said about me. You can't undo the months of lies." "So that's it? 22 years and you're just done?" I looked at her standing there in our driveway, next to Russell's crippled Tesla, with half the neighborhood watching from their windows. "I'm not the one who threw away 22 years. That was all you." That night, I stayed at Eli's boxing gym. Eli Martinez, no relation to the cop, had been my best friend since high school. He'd opened the gym after his fighting days ended, and it had become a second home for guys like me who needed somewhere to work out their frustrations without getting arrested. "So," Eli said, wrapping my hands for a session with the heavy bag, "how bad is it?" "Scale of 1 to 10, about a 15. Caught them in the act?" "Yep. Got it all on video too. Her boss, of all people. Guy makes more in a month than I do in a year." Eli shook his head. "Money doesn't make a man. How you handle your business when everything goes to hell. That's what makes a man." I started working the bag, letting 22 years of frustration flow through my fists. Each punch was a memory. Our wedding day, buying the house, the miscarriages that brought us closer together, the slow drift apart as her career took off and mine stayed steady. "What's your play?" Eli asked after I'd beaten the bag into submission. "Divorce. Take her for everything I can legally get. That's it? I stopped punching and looked at him. What do you mean that's it? Brother, your wife just humiliated you with her boss, in your own house, in your own bed, and your plan is to hire a lawyer and split assets? What else am I supposed to do? Eli grinned, the same grin he'd worn before every fight, the one that meant someone was about to get hurt. You're thinking like a husband, Trent. You need to start thinking like an engineer. What do you do when a building's got structural problems? Depends on the damage. Sometimes you can repair it, sometimes you have to demolish it. And if you're going to demolish it? I understood. You make sure it comes down clean. No collateral damage to surrounding structures. Exactly. So the question is, how do you bring down Janelle's world without damaging your own? I thought about it while I unwrapped my hands. Janelle worked for Morrison and Associates, one of the biggest marketing firms in the state. Russell was a senior partner, but he wasn't untouchable. The firm had strict policies about workplace relationships, especially between supervisors and subordinates. They also had major clients who wouldn't appreciate their account managers being involved in messy public scandals. I need more information, I said finally. What kind of information? The kind that shows this isn't Russell's first rodeo. Guys like him don't just wake up one day and start banging their employees. This is a pattern. Eli nodded approvingly. Now you're thinking like a fighter. You don't just throw haymakers. You set up your shots, work the body, wait for the opening. I spent the next 3 days gathering intelligence. It wasn't hard. Janelle had always been careless with technology. She'd synced her phone to our home computer for photo backups, never thinking to change the settings after she started her affair. Her text messages, emails, and photos all downloaded automatically to a folder I'd set up years ago. The messages painted a picture that made my stomach turn. The affair had been going on for 8 months. It had started during a business trip to Chicago, progressed to regular working lunches, and eventually moved to afternoon sessions at the Marriott downtown. Russell had a company credit card that he used for their hotel rooms, charging them as client meetings. But the real gold mine was in Russell's messages to Janelle about other women. Apparently, my wife wasn't his first conquest. There were references to Sarah from accounting, Michelle from the graphics department, and someone called the intern who'd left the company abruptly 6 months ago. Even better, Russell was bragging about his conquests to other men at the firm. Screenshots of photos, crude comments about the women's bodies, betting pools about who he'd seduce next. It was a harassment lawyer's dream case. The final piece of evidence came from an unexpected source. Vera Hutchins, Janelle's best friend and the firm's HR director. She called me on Thursday night, claiming she wanted to help mediate the situation. Trent, I know you're hurting, she said in that syrupy voice she used when she wanted something, but maybe we can work this out without destroying everyone's lives. What did you have in mind, Vera? Well, if you could see your way to not making a big fuss about this, I'm sure Russell would be willing to compensate you for your emotional distress. And Janelle is genuinely sorry. She wants to save your marriage. I almost laughed. How much emotional distress are we talking about? I think $50,000 would be fair. Cash. No lawyers, no messy divorce proceedings. Just a quiet settlement and everyone moves on. $50,000 to keep quiet about my wife's affair. The number told me everything I needed to know about how scared they were and how much more damage I could do if I played my cards right. That's generous, I said, but I'll need some time to think about it. Of course. But Trent, I hope you'll consider what's best for everyone involved, including yourself. The threat was subtle, but clear. Cross them, and they'd make my life difficult. Too bad for them. I'd been dealing with difficult my whole life. Friday morning, I made my first move. I called Morrison and Associates and asked to speak with the managing partner, David Morrison himself. His secretary tried to brush me off, but I dropped the magic words, harassment, and company credit card fraud. I was transferred immediately. Mr. Mallory, I understand you have some concerns about our firm. I have evidence that Russell Baird has been using company resources to conduct affairs with multiple employees, creating a hostile work environment and exposing your firm to significant legal liability. Silence on the other end. Then, what kind of evidence? Text messages, photos, credit card records, and testimony from the women involved. I also have documentation showing that your HR director, Vera Hutchins, is attempting to cover it up by offering bribes to keep victims quiet. More silence. David Morrison was probably calculating how much this could cost his firm in lawsuits, lost clients, and reputation damage. I think we should meet, he said finally. I think we should too. The Morrison & Associates building was downtown, all glass and steel and corporate ambition. I'd driven past it 1,000 times, never thinking I'd be inside, but here I was, sitting in David Morrison's corner office with a view of the river, about to blow up my wife's world. Morrison was older than I'd expected, maybe 65, with silver hair and the kind of calm demeanor that came from decades of handling crises. He reviewed the evidence I'd brought. Printed emails, text message screenshots, credit card statements I'd obtained through Janelle's online access. This is quite damning, he said after 20 minutes of reading. How did you obtain these communications? My wife synced her phone to our home computer. Everything was downloaded automatically. Perfectly legal. He nodded. And you said there were other women? At least 3 that I can document, probably more. Russell's been using his position to coerce female employees into private relationships, then bragging about it to his colleagues. Morrison's jaw tightened. What do you want, Mr. Mallory? I want justice. Russell Baird is a predator who's been using your company as his personal hunting ground. Vera Hutchins is covering for him. And my wife... I paused, surprised by how much it still hurt to say it. My wife got caught up in his games. You could file a lawsuit, win a significant settlement. I could. Or you could handle this internally, quickly and quietly before it becomes a public scandal that destroys your firm's reputation. Morrison leaned back in his chair. What are you proposing? Fire Russell immediately. Transfer Vera out of HR. Let Janelle keep her job, but make it clear that any future misconduct will result in immediate termination. In exchange, I don't go to the media or file a lawsuit. And financially? I don't want your money. I want your word that this behavior stops now. Morrison studied me for a long moment. You're not what I expected, Mr. Mallory. What did you expect? Someone looking for a payday, someone out for revenge. I smiled grimly. Who says I'm not out for revenge? Russell was fired that afternoon. Security escorted him from the building while he screamed about wrongful termination and threatened lawsuits. Vera was transferred to a satellite office in Grand Rapids, effectively exiled from the company's power structure. Janelle called me in tears. How could you do this to me? She sobbed. Russell's career is over. Vera's been humiliated. The whole office knows why they were fired. Good, I said. Maybe the next guy Russell works with will think twice before he starts preying on his employees. But what about us? What about our marriage? What marriage, Janelle? You ended our marriage when you started sleeping with your boss. I just made it official. I made a mistake. People make mistakes. Mistakes are forgetting to pick up milk on the way home. Mistakes are bouncing a check or getting a parking ticket. 8 months of lying and cheating isn't a mistake. It's a choice. You chose him over me every single day for 8 months. She was quiet for a moment. Then, what do you want? Money? I'll give you whatever you want in the divorce. I don't want your money. I want you to understand what you've done. I want you to live with the consequences of your choices. You're being cruel. No, Janelle. I'm being honest. Maybe for the first time in our marriage. The divorce papers were filed the following Monday. Michigan was a no-fault state, which meant the adultery didn't matter legally, but it sure as hell mattered to me. I asked for half of everything, the house, the savings, the investments. I also asked for spousal support, which raised some eyebrows since I made decent money as an engineer. It's about principle, I told my lawyer, Sarah Chen. She spent 8 months lying to me, using marital resources to conduct her affair, planning a future with another man while pretending to be my wife. I want her to pay for that, literally. Sarah was good at her job, thorough, aggressive, and completely unsympathetic to cheating spouses. We can make a case for spousal support based on the emotional distress and the impact on your earning capacity. Adultery might not be grounds for divorce anymore, but it's still relevant to asset division. The legal process moved slowly, but the social consequences were immediate. Word spread quickly through our circle of friends, and the reactions were predictably divided. Some people supported me, others thought I was being vindictive, and a few tried to stay neutral. The worst part was losing friends who took Janelle's side. People I'd known for years suddenly saw me as the bad guy for destroying Russell's career and humiliating Janelle publicly. Mike and Jennifer Patterson, who'd been our closest friends for a decade, invited me to lunch at our usual spot, a family restaurant called Danny's where we'd celebrated birthdays and anniversaries for years. "We need to talk," Mike said after we'd ordered. He was a sales manager for a pharmaceutical company, the kind of guy who could sell ice to Eskimos and thought every problem could be solved with the right pitch. "About what?" Jennifer leaned forward. She was a real estate agent, polished and professional, with the kind of smile that could convince you to buy a house in a flood zone. "About how you're handling this situation with Janelle." "You mean how I'm handling my wife's affair?" "We know you're hurt," Mike said. "But what you did to Russell was over the line. The man lost his job, Trent. His career is ruined." I set down my coffee cup carefully. Russell lost his job because he was using his position to harass employees. I just brought it to management's attention. "That's not how Janelle tells it," Jennifer said. "She says you went after him out of spite, that you twisted innocent flirtation into something sinister." "Innocent flirtation?" "I caught them in my bed, Jennifer. I have 8 months of text messages between them. I have credit card records showing hotel rooms charged as business expenses. What part of that sounds innocent to you?" Mike waved his hand dismissively. "Look, we're not saying what Janelle did was right, but marriages go through rough patches. People make mistakes. You could have handled this privately, worked it out between yourselves." "Worked what out? The fact that my wife was screwing her boss? The fact that she was planning to leave me for him? The fact that she told him I was a boring loser who didn't deserve her?" Jennifer's expression softened with fake sympathy. "We know that must have hurt, but destroying Russell's life won't bring back your marriage." "I'm not trying to bring back my marriage. I'm trying to make sure Russell doesn't do this to someone else's wife." "That's very noble," Mike said sarcastically, "but it sounds more like revenge to me." I looked at these people I'd considered friends, these people who'd eaten at my table and celebrated holidays with us, and realized they'd already chosen sides. In their minds, I was the villain for refusing to quietly accept my wife's betrayal. "You're right," I said, standing up and throwing $20 on the table. "It is revenge. Russell Baird thought he could destroy my marriage without consequences. He thought he could use his position to prey on women and get away with it. He was wrong." "Trent, sit down," Jennifer said. "We're trying to help you." "No, you're trying to make me the bad guy so you can feel better about staying friends with Janelle." "Well, here's some free advice. Be careful. If she'll lie to her husband for 8 months, she'll lie to her friends too." I walked out of Danny's knowing I'd never see Mike and Jennifer socially again. It hurt, but not as much as I'd expected. Losing fake friends was like removing a splinter, painful for a moment, then just relief. The pattern repeated itself over the next few weeks. Couples we'd socialized with for years suddenly became unavailable for dinner plans. People who'd seemed supportive initially began suggesting that maybe I was being too harsh or not thinking clearly. The final straw came at Tom Bradley's birthday party. Tom was a contractor I'd worked with on several projects, and his wife Susan had organized a backyard barbecue to celebrate his 50th. I'd been looking forward to it, a chance to be around normal people who weren't analyzing my marriage or offering unsolicited advice. I should have known better. Janelle was there, of course. She'd been friends with Susan since college, and the divorce wasn't final yet, so technically we were both invited. She looked good. She'd lost weight and was wearing a dress I'd never seen before, probably bought with money from our joint account. She was also there with a date. Not Russell. He was persona non grata in our social circle now. This was someone new, a guy named Derek who worked in finance. Younger than me, better dressed, with the kind of confident smile that said he'd never had to worry about mortgage payments or whether his truck would pass inspection. "Trent!" Susan Bradley rushed over as soon as she saw me, her face flushed with embarrassment. "I'm so glad you could make it. Listen, I hope this isn't awkward. I invited you both before I knew about… well, you know." "It's fine, Susan. I'm not going to cause a scene." But I wanted to. God, how I wanted to walk over to where Janelle was laughing at something Derek had said and ask her how long she'd been planning this. How long had she been lining up my replacement while pretending to work on our marriage? Instead, I grabbed a beer and found a spot near the grill where Tom was holding court with a group of guys from the construction trades. These were my people, men who worked with their hands, who understood that when something was broken, you either fixed it or replaced it. No endless therapy sessions or attempts to work through fundamental problems. "Sorry about all this shit with Janelle," Tom said quietly when the others were distracted by a football debate. "Susan feels terrible about inviting you both." "Not your fault. Or Susan's. Janelle's the one who decided to bring a date to a party where she knew I'd be." Tom shook his head. "That's cold, even for her. You think I'm being too hard on her?" "Hell no. Woman cheats, she loses the right to play victim. You did what any man would do." It was refreshing to hear someone take my side without qualifications or suggestions for how I could have handled things differently. But the relief was short-lived. "Trent." I turned to find Derek standing behind me, drink in hand, looking like he was about to deliver a sales pitch. "I'm Derek Collins. I wanted to introduce myself." I studied him for a moment. Mid-30s, expensive watch, haircut that probably cost more than I spent on groceries in a month. Everything about him screamed success and ambition. "Derek, you're Janelle's… what? Boyfriend? Rebound? Midlife crisis?" He smiled like he'd been expecting the hostility. "I'm her friend. She's been going through a difficult time, and I've been trying to support her." "How generous of you." "Look, I know this is awkward, but I wanted you to know that I respect what you two had. Janelle speaks very highly of you." I almost choked on my beer. "She speaks highly of me? That's interesting, considering she spent 8 months telling her boss what a boring loser I was." Derek's smile faltered slightly. "I think there are probably 2 sides to every story. You're absolutely right. There's the truth and there's whatever bullshit version Janelle's been feeding you. I understand you're angry. Do you? Do you understand that I built a life with that woman? That I trusted her completely while she was planning to leave me for another man? That I found out about her affair by walking in on her sleeping with her boss in the bed I made with my own hands?" Derek glanced around nervously. Our conversation was starting to attract attention from the other guests. "Maybe we should talk about this somewhere more private," he suggested. "Why? Ashamed to be seen with a cheater's husband? Worried people might think less of your girlfriend when they hear what she's really like?" "Trent, please." "No, Derek. You wanted to introduce yourself, so let me return the favor. I'm the guy whose wife you're screwing while the divorce papers are still warm. I'm the guy who's going to make sure everyone knows exactly what kind of woman Janelle really is. And I'm the guy who's going to be laughing when she does to you exactly what she did to me." The party had gone quiet around us. Janelle appeared at Derek's side, her face white with anger and embarrassment. "That's enough, Trent," she hissed. "You're making a fool of yourself." "I'm making a fool of myself? I'm not the one who brought a date to a party where my soon-to-be ex-husband was invited. I'm not the one who's been playing victim while shopping for my replacement. Derek is just a friend. Bullshit. I know what your friendships look like, Janelle. I have 8 months of evidence. Susan Bradley materialized between us like a referee breaking up a fight. Maybe we should all take a step back and— No need, I said, setting down my beer. I was just leaving. Enjoy the party, everyone. And Derek? Good luck with that one. When she starts working late and taking her ring off, you'll know what's coming. I walked away from the party, from the staring faces, from the whispered conversations that would start the moment my truck pulled out of the driveway. I'd burned another bridge, alienated more friends, but I didn't care anymore. Let them think I was the bad guy. Let them whisper about how bitter and vindictive I'd become. They hadn't lived my life, hadn't been betrayed by the person they trusted most. They could afford to be charitable because it wasn't their marriage that had been destroyed. That night, alone in my apartment, I'd moved out of the house during the divorce proceedings. I made a decision. If everyone wanted to see me as the villain, I'd give them a villain they'd never forget. The plan came together over the next 2 weeks. It was elegant in its simplicity, devastating in its execution, and completely legal. I'd learned a lot about Janelle's world during our marriage, her co-workers, her clients, her ambitions. More importantly, I'd learned about the things she was most afraid of: public humiliation, professional failure, and being seen as anything less than perfect. Morrison & Associates was hosting their annual Client Appreciation Gala at the Riverside Convention Center. It was the firm's biggest event of the year, with hundreds of clients, vendors, and community leaders in attendance. Janelle had been working on it for months before our separation. It was supposed to be her chance to shine, to prove she deserved the promotion Russell had been promising her. The irony was perfect. Getting an invitation wasn't difficult. I'd done structural consulting for several of Morrison's clients over the years, and my company was still on their vendor list. A few phone calls and I had a seat at the contractor's table, right in the middle of the ballroom where I could see everything. The gala was exactly what I'd expected: corporate elegance with an open bar and speeches about synergy and market leadership. Janelle was there, of course, working the room in a black cocktail dress that probably cost more than my monthly rent. She looked confident, professional, completely in her element. She hadn't seen me yet. I waited until the dinner service was finished, and David Morrison took the stage to deliver his annual State of the Company address. He talked about growth and opportunity, about the importance of integrity and trust in business relationships. The audience listened politely while checking their phones and calculating how much longer they had to stay to be polite. Then Morrison introduced the evening's special presentation, a video highlighting the firm's major accomplishments over the past year. The lights dimmed, and a large screen descended from the ceiling. But instead of corporate success stories, the audience saw something very different. It was security footage from the Marriott Hotel downtown, showing Russell and Janelle entering and leaving rooms over a period of several months. The timestamp showed these visits occurring during business hours, when both were supposedly in client meetings. The ballroom erupted in confused murmurs. Morrison frantically gestured to his technical team, but the video continued. Now it showed screenshots of text messages, Russell bragging about his conquests to other men at the firm, crude comments about the women's bodies, betting pools about who he'd seduce next. Janelle's face appeared on the screen, her name clearly visible in Russell's contact list under the entry, Hot Wife No. 3. The murmurs turned to gasps. People were pulling out their phones, recording the chaos. Morrison was shouting at someone to cut the power, but the video kept playing. The final segment was audio, a recording of Vera Hutchins offering me $50,000 to keep quiet about the affairs, admitting that Russell had been problematic with female employees for years, and suggesting that the firm would make things difficult for me if I didn't cooperate. When the screen finally went black, the ballroom was silent except for the hum of the air conditioning. 400 people sat in stunned silence, processing what they'd just witnessed. I stood up slowly, straightening my tie, Every eye in the room turned to me as I walked to the front, past tables full of Morrison's biggest clients, past Janelle's frozen face, past David Morrison's horrified expression. Someone handed me a microphone. I still don't know who. "Good evening," I said, my voice carrying clearly through the sound system. "For those who don't know me, I'm Trent Mallory. I'm a structural engineer here in town, and until recently, I was married to Janelle Mallory, one of Morrison & Associates' account managers." The silence was deafening. "I want to thank David Morrison for giving me this opportunity to address you all tonight. You see, I've learned some important things about structural integrity over the years. Buildings fail when the foundation is compromised, when the people responsible for maintaining them choose shortcuts over safety, when they prioritize appearance over substance." I looked directly at Janelle. She was crying now, mascara running down her cheeks, but I felt nothing. No sympathy, no regret, no satisfaction, just the cold certainty that justice was being served. The same is true for businesses. When the people in charge put their personal desires ahead of professional ethics, when they use their positions to exploit those beneath them, when they cover up misconduct to protect their reputations, well, eventually, everything comes crashing down. Morrison found his voice. "Security! Get this man out of here!" But the security guards weren't moving. They were as transfixed as everyone else. "Russell Baird used his position at this firm to harass multiple employees," I continued. "Vera Hutchins used her role in HR to cover up his crimes. And my wife—" I paused, looking at Janelle one last time. My wife was just another victim who became a willing participant. I set the microphone down and walked toward the exit. Behind me, the ballroom exploded into chaos, shouting voices, scraping chairs, the click of camera phones capturing the aftermath. Janelle caught up with me in the parking lot, Derek close behind her. "How could you?" she screamed. "How could you humiliate me like that?" I stopped and turned to face her. "The same way you humiliated me. The same way you destroyed our marriage. The same way you threw away 22 years for a man who saw you as nothing more than a conquest. You've ruined everything. My career, my reputation, my life. No, Janelle, you ruined everything. I just made sure everyone knew about it." Derek stepped forward, trying to play the protective boyfriend. "You're sick, man. What you just did was psychotic." I smiled at him, the same smile I'd given Russell the day I slashed his tires. "Derek, right? You might want to ask Janelle about her relationship history. Specifically, ask her what she was saying about me while she was sleeping with Russell, because whatever she's telling you about how terrible I am, she was saying the exact same things about me to him." Derek's confidence wavered. He looked at Janelle, who couldn't meet his eyes. "Think about it," I continued. "If she'll cheat with you, she'll cheat on you. It's just a matter of time." I left them standing there in the parking lot and drove home to my empty apartment. The local news had picked up the story by morning. "Marketing firm rocked by scandal" was the headline on Channel 7. The video had already gone viral on social media, shared thousands of times with comments ranging from supportive to horrified. Morrison & Associates lost 3 major clients within a week. 2 more employees came forward with harassment complaints against Russell, who was now facing potential criminal charges. Vera Hutchins was fired outright after the audio recording proved her involvement in the cover-up. Janelle was placed on administrative leave, pending an internal investigation. Her career in marketing was effectively over. No firm in the state would hire her after the public scandal. The divorce was finalized a month later. I got half of everything, just as I'd asked for. The house, the savings, the investments, split down the middle. Janelle had to sell her car to pay her legal fees. Derek left her 2 weeks after the gala. Apparently, he'd taken my advice to heart and started asking uncomfortable questions about her relationship patterns. I never saw Russell again. Last I heard, he was working for a small firm in Detroit, making a fraction of his former salary. The criminal charges were dropped due to lack of evidence, but his reputation was destroyed. No major corporation would touch him. 6 months after the divorce was final, I got a letter from Janelle. She was moving to Phoenix to live with her sister, starting over in a new city where nobody knew her story. She wanted to apologize, she said. She wanted me to know that she understood what she'd done to our marriage, to my trust, to my life. I threw the letter away without finishing it. Some people said I went too far. That public humiliation was cruel and unnecessary. That I should have taken the high road, handled things privately, been the better person. But those people didn't understand what it felt like to have your life destroyed by someone you trusted completely. They didn't understand the months of lies, the casual cruelty of being mocked to your wife's lover, the devastating realization that the person you'd built your life around saw you as nothing more than an obstacle to their happiness. I didn't want to be the better person. I wanted to be the person who made sure there were consequences for betrayal, who proved that actions have repercussions, who showed the world exactly what Janelle Mallory was capable of. I wanted to be the villain in her story, and I succeeded.